Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Mediterranean sun beat down on Monaco's beautiful waterfront as the Forrester Creations team arrived for what was meant to be a victorious international display. Ridge Forrester had pushed on the trip, desperate to re-establish the house's global reputation following months of domestic upheaval in Los Angeles. Brooke Logan Forrester strolled beside him, her hand linked around his arm, while Steffy Forrester Finnegan followed a few steps behind, phone in hand, negotiating last-minute arrangements with the team. None of them anticipated the press gathered outside the Hotel de Paris to be anything more than the normal Fashion Week crowd. They were wrong. The first flashbulbs went off before the limousine doors were fully open. Then came the shouted questions, harsh and persistent, piercing the pleasant Riviera environment like broken glass. Ridge, is it true that Forrester Creations has been inflating its European numbers? Brooke, how long have you been covering up the fraudulent sales reports? Steffy, did you approve the phantom contracts with the Monaco boutiques? Ridge's jaw stiffened. Brooke's smile froze. Steffy abruptly stopped walking. A young reporter from one of the local fashion newspapers pressed forward, microphone extended, her eyes blazing with the smell of blood. The documents disclosed this morning reveal a pattern of inflated predictions and non-existent purchase orders. The Monaco Press Association describes the entire Forrester rebound campaign as a cleverly orchestrated hoax. In other words, you're phony cheaters. The sentence struck like a physical blow. You're fake cheaters. It resonated across the marble steps, joined by half a dozen additional voices, and repeated in French and English until it became a chant. Security moved in, but the harm had already been done. By the time the three of them arrived in the relative safety of the hotel lobby, the story had already circulated on every major fashion aggregator across Europe. The mood inside the room with a view of the bay was glacial. Ridge strode across the living room, one hand pulling through his hair. Brooke stood at the window, arms crossed tightly across her chest. Steffy sat on the edge of the sofa, iPad perched on her knees, scrolling through the fast-expanding coverage of a stone-carved face. "This is impossible," Ridge concluded. "We have been meticulous." Steffy looked up. Every number had been checked. Apparently, not meticulously enough. "Look at this." She flipped the tablet to show them the scanned invoices, email chains, and anticipated sales figures that never materialized into actual deposits. Somebody inside fed them a package. Clean, structured, and devastating. They're claiming that the entire Monaco effort was a ruse to boost stock confidence and recruit new European investors. Brooke's tone was quiet but aggressive. Who would do this? And why now, as we begin to dig out of the whole hope and the Spencers made for us? Ridge stopped pacing. Does it matter who? The damage is done. The press is not seeking explanations. They're declaring us frauds. The phrase hung in the air. Fraud. Cheaters. Steffy placed the tablet gently. We need to move ahead of this. A news conference. Complete transparency. We open the accounts, invite impartial auditors, and present all authorized contracts. Anything less makes us appear guilty. What if the auditors uncover something? Brooke inquired. Ridge's eyes blazed. There's nothing to find. We constructed this campaign the correct way, but uncertainty had already set in. Over the next 12 hours, the coverage only increased. Local TV stations aired special parts. Fashion influencers shared side-by-side comparisons of expected numbers and actual boutique stocks. One especially scathing opinion piece in a Monaco Society magazine said that the Forresters used the principality as a handy stage for American-style fraud, concealing a hollow core behind the glamour of the Côte d'Azur. By the evening, the hotel was under siege. Ridge ordered room service and instructed the staff to ignore all media queries. Brooke attempted to call Carter Walton back in Los Angeles for damage control, but the connection kept dropping. Steffy spoke to Finn on the phone for over an hour, her voice low and tight as she detailed the scenario. She hung up with a chilly face. Finn says Sheila's been asking questions about Monaco for weeks, she said. She may have had something to do with the leak. Or she could just be circling, waiting for the appropriate time to offer her assistance. Ridge said under his breath. Of course she is. The true humiliation occurred the next morning. At 8:17 a.m., the Monaco Chamber of Commerce and a group of luxury stores issued a formal statement that was delivered to every major inbox. It was polite, clinical, and completely condemning. All pending orders and partnership conversations with Forrester Creations were put on hold indefinitely, while a comprehensive investigation into the apparent irregularities was conducted. Several retailers that had previously taken delivery of the new collection were quietly returning inventory. The phrasing was carefully chosen, but the message was clear. The Forresters were no longer welcome in the Principality's fashion industry until the accusations were resolved. Ridge read the statement twice, then 3 times, as if the words could rearrange themselves into something less disastrous. Brooke sat alongside him on the sofa, her hand lightly resting on his knee, providing whatever comfort she could. Steffi stood by the window, peering out at the yachts bobbing in the bay, as if the answer was somewhere among them. They're treating us like criminals, she explained gently. They're treating us like people who got caught, Ridge corrected, his voice angry. Brooke turned to face him. We weren't caught because we did nothing wrong. Someone is making this. Someone wants Forrester Creations to appear unstable on the global stage. And they are succeeding, Steffi continued. Check out the stock reaction already. European markets reopened. Our partners in Paris and Milan have called for emergency meetings. This is no longer simply a Monaco problem. It's global. The 3 of them spent the remainder of the morning in their own war room, phones continually ringing, emails pouring in, and each new discovery worse than the previous. According to an unidentified source quoted in a French business publication, Ridge personally approved the inflated predictions. Another outlet published a grainy photo of Brooke meeting with a local investor some weeks ago, presenting the conversation as evidence of a cover-up. Steffi's previous judgments as co-CEO were scrutinized in depth, with each difficult decision construed as part of a bigger pattern of lying. By midday, the pressure had become unbearable. Ridge stated that they will conduct a press conference that afternoon in the hotel's Grand Salon. No more hiding. No more statements from lawyers. They would face the cameras jointly and answer each question. The room was filled. Cameras lined the rear wall. Microphones protruded from the front row like a metallic thicket. Ridge assumed the center position, with Brooke on his right and Steffi on his left. The symbolism was deliberate. A unified front. Ridge started with a firm rejection. The claims reported in the Monaco press are baseless. Forrester Creations has conducted its operations in this region with perfect integrity. We welcome a thorough and independent audit of every contract, invoice, and correspondence relating to our European expansion. The questioning began immediately. Why were forecasted sales figures so much higher than actual orders? Who prepared the leaked documents? Is it true that internal communications reflect alarm about the figures dating back 3 months? Ridge fielded the first few with consistent authority. When the questions became personal, Brooke stepped in to defend the family's dedication to ethical business. Steffi handled the technical aspects, explaining the verification procedures that should have detected any discrepancy long before it became public. Then a reporter in the 3rd row stepped up and held a printed page. According to this email from 6 weeks ago, you, Mr. Forrester, directed the European team to present the most optimistic scenario possible to local partners. That sounds very much like fostering false pretenses. How do you reply to the accusation that you willfully permitted deceptive information to spread? Ridge's face became still. He recognized the language. He had said something similar in a private note to the marketing staff, but the context was different. Ordinary industry optimism, not deception. The email, however, had been stripped of its context and portrayed as a smoking gun. That communication has been taken out of context, he explained cautiously. The reporter pressed. Or it's been exposed for what it is. The Monaco press refers to you as fake cheaters. Given this data, why shouldn't the rest of the globe do the same? He repeated the words. Fake cheaters. It ricocheted around the room. Steffi leaned forward and said sharply. Because evidence demands context, and context necessitates good faith. What you are doing is not journalism. The assembled reporters murmured. It is a hit job. Brooke applied a restraining hand on Steffi's arm, but the harm was done. Within an hour, every European fashion channel would be airing a video of Steffi's rage, portrayed as the desperate defense of a cornered executive. The remainder of the press conference devolved into controlled anarchy. Ridge called it off sooner than expected, citing the need to confer with legal counsel. As they exited the salon under tight security, the shouted questions followed them down the corridor. Back in the suite, the silence was heavier than the earlier uproar. Ridge poured himself a drink he didn't really desire. We walked into an ambush. We walked into a trap that was set weeks ago, Steffi replied. When the story broke, someone wanted us to be here in the city. The optics of the Foresters being publicly humiliated on European soil are ideal for whatever is behind this. Brooke collapsed into a chair, looking tired. Hope, Bill. One of the European houses that lost ground to us last year. Or someone closer, Steffi replied gently. Someone who knows how we operate, how we communicate, which emails would look the worst when taken out of context. Ridge's head snapped. You are suggesting one of our own people. I'm saying we cease pretending the adversary is simply beyond the walls. The afternoon turned into dark without a resolve. Legal teams in Los Angeles and Paris began the laborious process of requesting original papers and tracking down the leak. Public relations professionals wrote statements that said little and promised a lot. Nothing felt like enough. As night came over Monaco, the three of them stood on the balcony, the harbor lights gleaming below them like scattered jewels. The beauty of the setting seemed almost mocking now. Ridge spoke first in a hushed voice. We've been called a variety of names over the years. Ruthless, obsessive, unforgiving, but never deceive, never cheat. Not like this. Brooke wrapped her arm around his waist. Then we'll show them incorrect. Not with statements, with a truth. Every number, each contract, every decision. We open it all. Steffi nodded, her gaze intense. And when we find out who did this, we make sure they never forget what it costs to go after Forrester creations. Below them, the Mediterranean continued its ceaseless cadence, unconcerned by the controversy blossoming on its beaches. Somewhere in the city, reporters continued to file stories, strengthening the tale of the American fashion empire brought down by its own claimed lie. The phrase would persist long after the immediate crisis had passed. You're false cheaters. Ridge, Brooke, and Steffi had been through worse storms. They had rebuilt the enterprise from the ashes several times. They had fought and stood together despite personal and professional betrayals. This new humiliation, however public or cleverly orchestrated, would not be the end of them. It would, however, alter the way they moved throughout the world. It would be more difficult to trust others. Each correspondence would be reviewed. Every partnership would require an added layer of prudence. The Monaco press did not simply challenge their numbers. It had called their character into question on a global scale, and such a wound could not heal easily. Ridge eventually turned away from the railing as the night grew darker. Tomorrow we will launch the counterattack. No more defense. We're going to assault. Brooke and Steffi exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting the same furious determination. I agree, Steffi answered. Together, Brooke explained. The three of them returned inside, leaving the gleaming harbor and its watchful gaze behind. The account of their humiliation has already been written in 12 languages. The story of their response had just recently begun. And if the Monaco press had assumed the Foresters would simply absorb the blow and retreat, they were about to be proven wrong. The ensuing days would put the family's alliances, internal loyalty, and resilience to the test. But for now, in the tranquility of the suite far above the scandal, Ridge, Brooke, and Steffy stood united against the storm that had brought them to the Mediterranean coasts. The charge was still burning. The phrase continued to resonate. "You are false cheats." They would respond in the only manner they knew how: by refusing to break. The Mediterranean sun blazed over Monaco's harbor, spilling golden light on the glittering boats and magnificent stone facades of Casino Square. Ridge Forrester stood on the edge of the Hotel de Paris terrace, his hands gripping the railing as he peered out at the lake. Brooke Logan adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, allowing the smooth fabric to catch the breeze. Steffy Forrester Finnegan checked her phone one final time before placing it in the clutch of her fitted blue suit. The three of them had come to Monaco with one goal in mind: to rebuild Forrester Creations' global reputation following months of internal strife and public humiliation. A meticulously organized press event, a limited collection drop, and a series of exclusive interviews were intended to remind the fashion industry that the Forresters continue to set the bar. They had no notion that the Monaco press had already chosen otherwise. The first indication came that morning when their publicist, a poised Frenchwoman called Elise Moreau, entered the suite with a stack of local papers and a tense expression. She placed the first sheet on the coffee table without speaking. The headline wasn't subtle. It read, "The Forrester Charade, Fake Cheaters in Paradise." Below it was an image of Ridge and Brooke walking arm in arm throughout the casino gardens the previous evening, with Steffy a few steps behind them. Ridge's jaw tightened as he read the story, which claimed the family staged a public reconciliation to distract from years of calculated infidelity and corporate theater. It accused him of using Brooke as a revolving door while keeping emotional ties to Taylor Hayes, and of acting loyal for the cameras but making actual decisions in private. Brooke was seen as the everlasting enabler, a woman who forgave everything because the Forrester name still gave her authority. Steffy was regarded as the polished result of the same hypocrisy, publicly loyal to her marriage but privately navigating the devastation left by her parents' never-ending cycle of betrayal. "This is garbage," Ridge replied quietly. Elise clasped her hands and said, "We came here to work." This week, the local press has been particularly nasty. Someone gave them old film, quotes, and some new anonymous tips. They're portraying the entire trip as damage control for a family that can't stop cheating on itself. Steffy's eyes sharpened. "Who?" "I do not know yet. However, the tale has already propagated online. International outlets are picking it up." Brooke reached for Ridge's hand. "We have survived worse. We'll reveal the truth in the conference this afternoon and then move on." Ridge gave her a long look. The reality was difficult. He'd spent decades moving between Brooke and Taylor, with each reunion resulting in another fracture. Brooke had forgiven him more times than they could count. Steffy grew up witnessing it all, knowing early on that love in their family came with restrictions and public displays. None of this constituted them fake cheaters, but the press did not require accuracy. They needed a narrative that would sell. The presentation was scheduled for 3 p.m. in a glass-walled lounge overlooking the waterfront. By the time the Forresters arrived, the room was full. Photographers lined the walls. Journalists from Paris, Milan, New York, and every major European fashion desk crowded the seats. Elise had carefully crafted a statement describing the new worldwide project, the limited Monaco capsule collection, and Forrester's commitment to innovation. Ridge wanted to speak first, followed by Brooke and Steffy. They'd show a united front. They never had the chance. When Ridge approached the stage, a reporter from a Monaco tabloid stood and shouted, "Mr. Forrester, is this entire trip an attempt to hide the truth that your marriage to Brooke Logan is really a temporary arrangement until Taylor Hayes is ready again?" The cameras clicked. The room became still. Ridge's voice stayed steady. "We're here to talk about Forrester Creations' future. Personal speculation has no place in this briefing." A second reporter stood up. "Mrs. Forrester, how many times have you publicly forgiven your husband just to learn that he was already preparing his next reconciliation with Dr. Hayes? Isn't that the definition of a fraudulent marriage?" Brooke's chin rose. "My marriage isn't a headline-grabbing performance. We're here to speak about design, not gossip." Steffi moved forward before the next question could be posed. This is a professional event. If you have any queries concerning the collection, ask them. Everything else is irrelevant. The third question came from a young woman in the front row. Her voice crisp and clear. Ms. Forrester, your parents have been cheating on each other in public for 30 years, calling it love. You grew up amidst that pandemonium. How can anyone believe this family is capable of genuine loyalty, professional or personal, when the evidence suggests otherwise? You're all false cheaters. Admit it. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Ridge's hands clenched into fists by his sides. Brooke reddened, but she did not look away. Steffi's expression became icy and controlled, the same one she used in boardrooms when someone attempted to undermine her authority. Elise walked fast, hoping to end the session early, but the atmosphere had already transformed. Questions heaped on top of each other. Old videos of Ridge and Taylor kissing on a beach from years ago appeared on phones held up by media. Screenshots of Brooke's previous claims regarding forever circulated in real time. Someone had even uncovered a decade-old interview in which Steffi, who was much younger at the time, admitted to feeling like a piece in her parents' never-ending game. Ridge eventually raised his voice. Enough. Do you want a story? Here is one. Humans make mistakes. People hurt those they care about. This does not imply that an entire family is fake. We have created something that will live longer than any single relationship. That is what we came here to preserve. A reporter in the rear laughed. Protect it from yourselves, you mean? Within minutes, the session was over. Elise led them out a side entrance while security kept the gathering under control. Ridge had difficulty breathing in the hallway. Brooke's hands shook slightly as she reached for him. Steffi stood apart, staring at the floor with her jaw frozen. They're not wrong about the past, she added gently. But they're wrong about what it means. Brooke turned to face her. Steffi, no. Let me finish. I saw you both destroy each other and rebuild yourselves so many times that I stopped thinking either of you meant it. I grew up and realized something. This means it doesn't always appear clean. Sometimes it appears that you should stay even when the rest of the world tells you to leave. Sometimes it appears that you are choosing the same individual after failing the first time. That does not make you a fake. Makes you stubborn. And possibly foolish. But not phony. Ridge's voice was harsh. I never wanted you to carry that.